variations, or as they were known when they were published in 1741, the aria with, as he said, varying variations. But I have to say it is on the bucket list of my bucket list. And I think it is for many of us who are keyboardists, if not something that we want to play, something that is just a milestone of musicianship. It's because it goes beyond being able to play it, but being able to express it. All of us probably have our favorite recordings. It actually fell into obscurity in the 19th century, and it was actually Rudolf Serkin playing it on piano in the 1920s that brought it back. And then after that, Wanda Landowska played it on harpsichord. And now you can find it, for jazz trio and for orchestra. We know that the two Glenn Gould recordings, Marie Pariah, Jeremy Dank just came out with quite an interesting recording of the Goldberg Variations. And it was only in 2003 that the Gilmore Festival put out a call for composers to write new variations on the Goldberg. And there were 12 composers who actually wrote variations on the aria. So for those of you who may not know the Goldberg Variations, for one, when you have a spare hour, it's really worth it. It might be an hour and a quarter, depending on who you listen to. But it begins and ends with this just glorious aria that you never hear again until the end, because we are trained to listen and follow the melody. And all of the variations are actually based on the bass line. And so in these new variations, there's a little bit of both. There are also composers I had heard of, like David Del Tredici and Jennifer Higdon and William Bolcom, and then composers I had never ever heard of before. Misha Sarshe, I'm going to completely destroy this name. Misha Sarshe Zupko and Rafe Gothoni. And so what happened was that these 12 composers created individual variations based on the aria. And the plan was that Gilbert Kalish, who gave the premiere performance at the Gilmore Festival in May of 2004, would put them in an order. And he has done that. And they actually, you can buy all of these. It's a really interesting set of variations. And they say these are meant to be played as a set, but we leave it up to everyone to do what they want. You can play individual variations, you can reorder them, you can do whatever you want to do. And so I have actually picked two of them to play for you today. The first one is by Rafe Gothoni, who is a Finnish composer now living in Germany, and that's about all I can find out about him. I mean, he's a composer, conductor, pianist. His variation is called Variation of Variation with Variation. And that will kind of make sense, as the aria itself is a binary tool, so he doesn't strictly do the binary. And then the second one I'm playing is by David Del Tredici, who's an American composer. Both of these men are still alive. Del Tredici's is called My Goldberg, and then in parentheses, Gymnopédie number 1. Well, he actually has a set of 3 gymnopédies that are based on the settee. And so he goes, I will say, further away from the original Vandos Gothoni. Also, Del Tredici took great delight in this, and there's a quote from him in an NPR article where he is just like, classical music needs shaking up. It's just too serious, and anything that can get us to actually listen, with new ears is a great thing. So I will play these, and I will play the aria only at the end, so that in a way it's kind of like a puzzle, that you'll hear things that you've heard before, but it's like, wait, was that, or was it not? run the gamut. I mean, there are some that will just kind of shock me, and it's just like any other new music. Sometimes you kind of turn the page around a few times to figure out where North is, and they really are, to me, they're an extension of what is possible. For those of you who are composers, I would welcome more variations on the Goldberg aria if you feel so moved to do that. I personally struggle as a teacher very much sometimes with the thought that we have possibly become so authentic, since the mid-20th century with the way it's supposed to be played, that the freedom of expression, especially for pianists, has sometimes become, how can I be able to play, the Chopin G minor ballade and have anything to say personally that won't put me in a way, get me kicked out, of consideration for some competition or other things. And so one way to go, is to learn all of the pieces by Rossini for piano. So you just learn all the things that nobody else plays. which is a great thing to do because, as we just heard, it expands our repertoire. But I think that we do our entire profession a disservice if we don't also look at kind of the canon of what we have and, see what, where, just be, we run that risk of it's the way it's always done, and so that when we're in a time when we're all looking for students, we're all wanting to help people, in a way connect with themselves and it, as musically expressive beings, that this idea of letting them find their creativity is, to me, is vitally important. And having something such as this that in a way takes such a vital musical composition. And I don't think it turns it on its head. I don't think it does anything except show other ways of contributing, of using it as a starting point. Not just for new compositions, but possibly for discussion. So I would welcome comments, questions. Yes?
The aria that the Goldbergs were originally based on is taken from where?
We see it in Anna Magdalena's hand, in the Anna Magdalena notebook. We assume that Bach taught it to her. But it's not actually in his handwriting, in that notebook. But it's not we know that there are other things of other people who visited that they wrote in the notebook. So, and it's not in that. We do know that it's in her hand. So, as far as I remember, at the moment. Yes, it existed on its own. And then, we can go as much as we want in the creation myth of trying to help Count Goldberg go to sleep. If you know the pieces, I'm not sure how much that would have worked. Although you can count cannons as well as you can count sheep, so.
Just a shout out for Simona Dinnerstein's recording. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Simona Dinnerstein.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's so many, and in fact, there's someone I've never heard of. There's a French pianist who's I'm coming to the Metroplex to judge for a Steinway competition in a couple weeks. And the night before I start judging, there's a French pianist I've never heard of who's playing Goldberg and supposedly has all these rave reviews. So I'm greatly looking forward to that. Because as much as the recordings are great, there is nothing like hearing it live. And it is truly on my bucket list, and I have a plan that I may tell you as to how I'm going to learn it. Yes, Timothy.
How do you put this in your memory? Can you use some harmonic conclusions, etc., that to memorize it?
What was very interesting is that I found the Del Tredici much harder to memorize than the Gothoni. For me, and I had to use his sequencing. How many times do you do this? There's one place in it that I've been surprised lately. Go, wow, it all went well. And then of course I have to be very careful I don't mess up immediately what comes after it. But I have perfect pitch, and so that helps. But it's just really getting, just becoming familiar, with the music, to the point that I feel. It's always that turnaround, especially for memory, it is always tricky. And especially with more contemporary things that don't go where you expect them to go.
Great virtuosos tend to avoid Bach on the stage.
That's
right?
Yeah, oh I know, yeah. So my plan, and then I know I'm running out of time, I have a friend who's a harpsichordist. And so, we both was like, oh, the Goldberg. So, and I keep having to push this back in terms of starting it. This same friend decided she was going to nominate me as a Steinway artist, and so I'm jumping through some of those hoops as we speak, and so they keep pushing back some of the things I need to do, so I can't just focus on this, but the plan is to just take a variation a month. along with everything else, that I do, but just one variation a month. And then of course it's gonna get harder as I try to keep up some of the variations. But just rather than try to approach, in a way, the entire mountain, take it more as Mount Fuji and take one stage at a time, and we'll see. So maybe in 3 or 4 years, you'll be able to hear me play the Goldberg. Any other questions? Thank you very much.